Is your compost pile a mystery? Are you tired of guessing if it's healthy or ready to use? Fellow gardeners, it's time to stop the guesswork and start reading the secret language your compost has been speaking all along. Your pile is constantly communicating its health, progress, and readiness through subtle signals that, once decoded, will transform your composting success forever. Say goodbye to failed batches, and hello to that nutrient-rich black gold your plants are craving. Too many gardeners fall into the trap of thinking composting is simply about throwing kitchen scraps and yard waste into a bin and waiting. This set it and forget it mentality is exactly why so many piles fail to reach their potential or worse, become smelly, anaerobic messes that attract pests. Your compost pile is a living ecosystem, and like any thriving community, it has specific needs and clear ways of expressing when those needs aren't being met. The moment you approach your compost pile, it begins telling its story. Before you even lift the lid or turn a single forkful, visual cues are already revealing crucial information about what's happening beneath the surface. A healthy, active pile often produces visible steam on cooler mornings, indicating robust microbial activity generating heat. The overall shape and structure of your pile also speaks volumes. A well-maintained compost should hold its form while remaining slightly loose, not collapsed into a soggy mass or standing rigid like a fortress that moisture and air cannot penetrate. Understanding why observation matters is the foundation of successful composting. Every color change, texture shift, and aromatic note is your pile's way of requesting specific adjustments. When you learn to read these signals accurately, you transform from a passive composter hoping for the best into an active partner in the decomposition process, guiding your pile toward optimal conditions for rapid, healthy breakdown. Beyond the surface, there are visual cues that really tell the real story of your compost's health and progress. Color is probably the most immediate and telling indicator. When you add fresh materials to your pile, they usually show their original, vibrant colors. But as decomposition moves along, you'll notice a gradual transition through some pretty predictable stages. Those bright greens from fresh grass clippings and kitchen scraps will slowly fade to olive and brown tones, while dry brown materials like leaves start to darken as they break down. The magic really happens when these distinct colors begin blending into more uniform shades, eventually reaching that coveted dark chocolate brown hue of finished compost. However, certain colors serve as warning flags. If you spot bright white patches, you're probably seeing beneficial fungi at work, which is actually a good sign. But if parts of your pile look gray or black with an oily sheen, that's a clue you're dealing with anaerobic conditions that need immediate attention. Vibrant orange or red areas might mean you've added too much citrus or other acidic materials, while an overall pale, bleached look usually suggests your pile is too dry and could use some moisture along with nitrogen-rich materials. Texture evolution tells an equally important story about how your pile is progressing and how healthy it is. In the early stages, you'll notice individual components are still pretty recognizable, but they start to soften around the edges. As the weeks go by, you should see materials becoming more fragmented and beginning to mesh together. A healthy, active pile develops a kind of fluffy, layered texture that lets air circulate while still holding enough structure to keep moisture in effectively. The presence of beneficial creatures is another positive visual indicator that your pile ecosystem is functioning properly. Earthworms are perhaps the best sign of a healthy pile, as they only inhabit environments with proper moisture, temperature, and pH levels. You might also spot beneficial insects like ground beetles and various decomposer organisms. However, if you notice flies, particularly fruit flies or house flies, or see evidence of larger pests like rats, your pile likely contains inappropriate materials or lacks proper balance and management. Aromatic secrets, what your nose knows. A properly functioning compost pile should smell pleasant and earthy, reminiscent of a forest floor after a gentle rain. This sweet, rich aroma indicates that aerobic bacteria are thriving and breaking down organic matter efficiently. When you detect this ideal scent, you know your carbon-to-nitrogen ratio is balanced, moisture levels are appropriate, and air circulation is adequate. However, your nose can quickly detect when things go wrong. A sour, vinegary smell typically indicates your pile has become too acidic, often from an excess of fruit scraps or insufficient brown materials. This condition slows decomposition and can harm beneficial microorganisms. Adding dry leaves, shredded paper, or wood chips while turning the pile usually corrects this imbalance within a few days. The dreaded rotten egg or sewage smell signals anaerobic conditions, meaning your pile lacks oxygen and harmful bacteria have taken over. This typically occurs when piles become too wet, too compacted, or contain inappropriate materials like meat or dairy. So, the solution here involves a few steps. First, you'll want to immediately turn the pile to introduce some air. Then, add absorbent brown materials and maybe even remove any problematic ingredients if needed. A strong ammonia odor? Well, that's a sign of excessive nitrogen, usually from too many grass clippings or fresh manure. You can balance this out by incorporating carbon-rich materials and making sure there's proper aeration. Now, sweet, alcoholic smells might seem pleasant at first, but they actually indicate fermentation rather than proper decomposition. While not harmful, this process is less efficient than aerobic composting. It may produce compounds that could temporarily stress your plants if the compost is used too soon. Let's talk about the touch test, which is all about feeling for health. Temperature is perhaps the most critical physical indicator of your pile's microbial activity and overall health. During peak decomposition, a properly managed pile should feel warm to hot, reaching internal temperatures between 110 and 160 degrees Fahrenheit. This heat indicates that beneficial thermophilic bacteria are actively breaking down organic matter while destroying potential pathogens and weed seeds. If you can comfortably hold your hand deep in the pile without feeling significant warmth, well, your compost likely needs more nitrogen-rich materials, additional moisture, or better aeration to jumpstart that microbial activity. Conversely, if your pile feels uncomfortably hot or is steaming excessively, temperatures may be climbing too high, and that can actually kill off those beneficial organisms you want to keep. This usually means there's too much nitrogen or just not enough carbon materials in the mix. The solution here is to add some brown materials and turn the pile, which will help moderate the temperature and, improve the overall balance. Moisture assessment through touch actually reveals some crucial information about your pile's ability to support microbial life. So, just grab a handful of material from various depths and squeeze gently. Ideally, your compost should feel like a well-wrung sponge, moist but not dripping. If water streams out when you squeeze it, your pile is too wet and is probably developing anaerobic conditions. In that case, add some dry brown materials and turn the pile thoroughly to improve drainage and aeration. On the other hand, if the material feels dusty or just crumbles completely when squeezed, it's too dry for optimal decomposition. Add water gradually while turning and aim for that perfect sponge-like consistency throughout. The density and weight of your compost materials also provide valuable feedback. Materials should feel substantial without being heavy or compacted. If sections feel dense and compressed, they're likely lacking air circulation and may develop anaerobic problems. Regular turning and adding coarser materials like small twigs or shredded cardboard helps maintain proper structure and airflow. Reading readiness. So is your compost done? Determining when your compost has fully transformed from raw organic waste into garden-ready amendment really requires combining all your newly developed observation skills. Finished compost should pass what experienced composters call the ultimate test, which involves multiple sensory evaluations working together to confirm readiness. Visually, mature compost appears uniformly dark and crumbly, resembling rich potting soil more than decomposing organic matter. You should no longer be able to identify individual components like vegetable peels, leaves, or grass clippings. The texture should be fairly uniform throughout, though some variation is normal and even beneficial. Small pieces of woody materials like twigs may remain, but these can be screened out or left in place as they continue breaking down slowly. The aroma test for finished compost involves that same pleasant, earthy smell you've learned to recognize, but now it should be consistent throughout the pile, without any sharp or offensive notes. Finished compost often smells remarkably similar to high-quality potting soil, with that rich, loamy fragrance that makes you want to breathe deeply. Temperature-wise, finished compost should feel cool, matching the ambient air temperature. This indicates that the intensive decomposition phase has completed and the material has entered the stable curing phase. However, don't mistake coolness for inactivity. Finished compost still contains countless beneficial microorganisms, just not the heat-producing thermophilic bacteria of active decomposition. When your compost passes these readiness tests, you've successfully created what gardeners often call black gold or nature's perfect plant food. This nutrient-rich amendment can be used immediately as a top dressing around plants, mixed into potting soil for containers, or incorporated into garden beds before planting. For maximum benefit, consider creating compost tea by steeping your finished compost in water, creating a nutrient-rich liquid fertilizer that delivers both minerals and beneficial microorganisms directly to plant roots. Properly finished compost provides slow-release nutrition, improves soil structure, enhances water retention in sandy soils, and improves drainage in clay soils. It also introduces beneficial microorganisms that help plants resist diseases and access nutrients more effectively. Your decoded pile has transformed from kitchen waste into a complete soil amendment that professional gardeners spend significant money purchasing. Remember that composting is both science and art, requiring patience and observation skills that improve with experience. Each pile teaches valuable lessons about balance timing and the remarkable transformation that occurs when organic matter returns to the earth. By learning to read your compost signals accurately, you've gained a skill that will serve your garden for years to come, turning waste into wealth and closing the natural nutrient cycle in your own backyard. Ready to become a compost detective? Start observing your pile today using these techniques, and don't forget to subscribe to Smart Garden for more game-changing gardening insights. Share this guide with fellow gardeners who are ready to decode their compost mysteries and unlock the full potential of their organic waste. Your plants will thank you for the nutrient-rich feast you're about to provide.